Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Episode 8, the Ocho. Wow, we are so happy to have everyone here right now. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening, for paying attention, for downloading, for interacting. It's been a fun ride so far. We're going to keep this train rolling. Episode 8, chock full of nuggets of information right now, and some interesting topics we haven't touched on yet so far. So we're very excited to get rolling on that. But before we jump into that, I don't know about you. I did some gardening this weekend. My parents, God love them, huge garden in the background, and in the backyard. They've never been able to keep up with in the last few years for reasons that out of their control. So my wonderful girlfriend and I volunteered to help clean up the garden like people do like during springtime and everything. Yeah, let me tell you, that motherfucker was full of weeds. Like when I tell you 2 days full of taking out weeds, trimming branches.
The good ones or the bad ones?
The good what? Weeds? There's good weeds? Well, fuck, they're all gone anyways now. At least they're going to be over the weekend. I don't give a shit, good or bad.
The 420.
Gardening is brutal.
Dude, like sunburns in places I never knew existed. Like my calves are like on fire, and not for the good reason. I got bites everywhere. Like, and funniest part.
Fab, God bless you, because you bought a condo to not do this, and now you're doing this. God bless you.
That's funny. It's true. It's true.
It's the emotion is drained from my face.
You might as well just buy a house. You know where.
Laval.
You're at that point.
Everyone going to Laval.
Guys, what's Laval backwards? So. So my father, God bless him, like he's at the point of his life right now where like he's a little bit more grumpy than he used to be, and he lives between. I lives with my mom.
He's allowed.
No, it's not that. It's anything annoys him right now. So my neighbor next door has dogs, and he lets the dogs out in the backyard, and they bark. And my parents' neighbor, 2 houses down, also has dogs, and they let the dog out, and they bark, and they're barking to each other. My father comes out. He's yelling at them in Italian, cursing at them, yelling profanities. And at one point, he just yells to them in English, to the dogs. He's like, I want to go buy a gun and I want to shoot you and your owner. I was like, Pa, what? You can't, you can't do that. Get inside the house, man. He's like, I want to go buy a gun and I want to shoot. Get inside the house.
So he supports that politician that kills the dogs, right? What's her name? In the U.S., she wrote a freaking memoir or whatever the heck it is, and
Michaela Vick.
That's it. She wrote a memoir, and in there says how she killed a dog with a gun, 14-month dog with a gun, and she thought it was good to put that in a book and release it during an election year.
Dak, it's not Michaela Vick.
Oh, I just got.
Fab, your dad missed the perfect opportunity to tell your neighbor who let the dogs out in Italian.
That would have been good.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
Anyways, God bless him. Long story short, I didn't hate it as much as I thought I would. It was just a long 2 days of potting and putting plants and taking out weeds. And I got to go back this weekend to fucking mulch.
That's how it is, buddy.
Yeah, it's never over, man. It's a work in progress all summer.
And Raj, thank you very much for letting me bother you with all my grass questions.
It's a pleasure. Anyone who knows me knows I didn't think I'd be there. Like, obsessed with grass.
Dude.
Obsessed with weeds. Like, yeah, I'm there. Like, 30, almost 37 years old, I'm there. And I didn't think 100%. I'd be at this place.
You take a little bit of pride in having a nice lawn, and I can understand why.
Yeah.
I can understand why. So that was my weekend. Nak, I heard you had a nice weekend too. You're in Toronto. What happened?
Yeah, we went to Toronto. It was my wife's cousin was having a wedding, so we went down with the fam. Went down with my brother-in-law, my in-laws as well. Very fun, except for the baby woke up with a nice fever on Friday, so the drive down was just like brutal. Woke up again Saturday with even higher fever, so we had to find a clinic in Toronto to like take her, and yeah, that was just a shit show. Found out it was like a massive ear infection, like huge ear infection. So
poor thing.
Look, luckily we were able to get an appointment somewhere. We got meds, and as soon as she started taking the meds, she started feeling better. But no, look, all in all, sick weekend. But man, when you have kids and they're not on schedule and their naps are off and this is off, it could turn ugly real fast. And man, it turned ugly real fast at times. It's crazy. But no, look, it was nice to get away. Nice to be somewhere else for a weekend. And wedding was fun too. Had a good time.
But you're missing the best part. How was the aquarium?
It was good. Look, we went to Ripley's Aquarium. It was fine. Like I've been to better aquariums. Like the one in Boston, the New England Aquarium was a lot better.
Yes.
I've been to the one also in Barcelona, and that one was a lot better. Like it was cool. There was one part where like you're on a conveyor and like you just kind of stand on it and it takes you around like the huge like aquarium and like sharks go around you and stuff. Like it's cool. It was cool. The kids had obviously a blast, which was the point. I thought I was gonna have more of a blast than the kids, but
Wow.
no, look, all in all, okay, it was nice. Walked around downtown. Downtown was a zoo because there was a Jays game in the afternoon on Sunday too. So a lot of like Jays fans, they finally won a game and they won. So it was cool. Downtown is just insane.
I did not peg Knack as an aquarium guy.
Oh, dude, I'm a huge marine guy.
That's cool.
Like,
I didn't know.
Am
That's
like,
amazing.
oh yeah, I love sharks. You listen to me in the chat. Shark Week, me and Guido go crazy for that. I'm a huge shark guy. Like whales, stuff like that. Like I want to go. Like I'd love to swim with sharks one day.
What's the other Shark Week term we're referring to? What was that called again? Someone mentioned something about Shark Week. No, okay, forget it.
I don't know.
I have an idea, but I don't want to say it on the pod.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe.
Switching gears.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect.
Switching gears. Got NBA playoffs. Second round concluded this week. Very exciting stuff, Roger. I want to know who you have in the NBA playoffs, and why is it Michael Jordan's illegitimate son, Anthony Edwards?
Oh yeah, so the Knicks are done. I'm sad about that. I was really, really excited about double MSG, Rangers, and Knicks, but Brunson was he was all on his own. So the Knicks lost. They got destroyed. The Nuggets. So the OKC Dallas game was amazing. The Nuggets Timberwolves game was amazing as well. Both like kind of like comebacks. I love Ant, but it's hard to bet against Luka. Like right now, he's playing like the second best player in the league right now. So I have a hard time betting against Luka. What you said about Ant though, and Anthony Edwards, like yeah, he plays like Jordan. He like wears his armband like him.
Yeah.
He wears his leg band like him. He has the sweat. Like he's got
that dog in him, man. He's got that dog in him. He's fun.
Everyone's in love with him now. Like everyone is like. It's bound
to like switched on, eh? Like you really didn't hear about this guy, and then all of a sudden it was like a switch flicked, and it was like, all right, MJ.
Well, it's because he's different than the typical like 22-year-old star who's all about social media and like he's all about ball, right? Like so it's really fun to watch. So yeah, now Michael Jordan has two legitimate sons, Anthony Edwards, Jimmy Butler, along with Jimmy Buckets, along with I think 5 other real confirmed.
They always pinpoint where he was at this time, who was playing for.
He doesn't look like MJ, but he doesn't look like MJ at all.
I saw a graphic of him side by side, like, okay, like you're grasping for straws a little bit just to try to make a point, I think. But
so I think game 1 is tonight. There's a game 1 tonight. I think it's the Eastern Conference Finals. So it should be really fun. Looking forward to that, and then the finals.
Yeah, I think it tipped off 40 minutes ago because we are 8:41 Eastern time, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, indeed. So yeah, it was a great weekend of NBA basketball, great weekend overall, and yeah, it's good time in sports for sure.
But not to take the pod into an NBA conversation, I would have to disagree with you though about having his hands full with Doncic. Not to take anything away from Doncic, but that team defensively is stacked. Like you got
the Wolves.
Yeah, man. Yeah. You got Naz Reid, 6th man of the year over there playing hard defense, and you got Kat, and you got Rudy Gobert, and it's just like they got defensively. It's going to be very tough to play against, and when you can shut down Jokic like that, like I know he had, I think it was Game 6 where he just like turned it on. Game 5 where he just like, destroyed the entire team. But I guess they prevailed. And that fourth quarter in Game 7,
It was amazing.
where they were just dropping everything. They had a 20-point deficit.
Yeah, it was amazing.
And they just scored 30 straight or something like that. Like, completely unanswered, ridiculous. Super fun times for NBA playoffs. Even though it's a football podcast, we do appreciate sports in general. So we did want to wet everyone's respective whistle with that. But we are going to jump into a little segment called News or Noise, where we want to touch on some news that's coming out with the NFL right now. Want to see if it's related to fantasy, if there's any impact or not, why we think so or not. So we're going to jump right into one of the first topics right now. Marquee player, arguably wide receiver number one, arguably. I know Nak's going to have a different opinion on that, and that's fine. Justin Jefferson. Sorry, you got CeeDee Lamb's nuts in your mouth. It's fine. I get it. That's fine. Justin Jefferson is holding out for OTA. Ladies and gentlemen, OTA stands for Organized Team Activities, which is basically the team's organized.
It is what activities. It is. Yeah,
it's voluntary. It's voluntary, but a lot of players, they do hold out to a variety of reasons. Justin Jefferson right now is holding out due to contract negotiations. Nak, I want to get your 2 cents on whether this is news or noise. If the holdout does continue, and if no contract is established, are you concerned as a fantasy football player, and where you're going to be drafting him or not, and then where that is, and as objectively, how do you feel about this?
Honestly, right now it's not even news. It's just noise. OTAs right now is voluntary, so a lot of vets skip these. Not usually, but if you're in contract negotiations, he is under contract, so that's different than, let's say, a T. Higgins who's technically not signed, right? So he's not even allowed to join his team without signing the contract. So Justin Jefferson is under contract, but it is voluntary. A player of his magnitude doesn't need to show up to these. It's not a huge deal. Personally, I don't think it is. If a deal doesn't get done by minicamp and he starts to hold out, that's where it becomes more news, because it becomes more real. He's also subjected to fines in that, because minicamp is mandatory. So right now, I'm not all that worried at all. I really don't. I think this is just noise right now. He doesn't really need to be there. He wants to be locked in long term. There's no need for him to go there and risk an injury for OTAs, right? For voluntary OTAs. So yeah, my stance is just noise.
Raj?
I think the last, correct me if I'm wrong, the last real holdout was Le'Veon Bell, right? Like where guys he missed a player who missed time, regular season time.
I think there was one more person who missed like a game or two. There was one more person. Bell was like the one, like the crazy one where he missed. And I think someone signed. It was the last person I think was signed, but wasn't game ready to start.
Josh Jacobs?
It was Josh Jacobs.
I think it was Josh Jacobs. That's
exactly.
The last one.
So my point,
but he did sign before.
The point I'm trying to make is that I think that scared a lot of players. Like we saw what happened with Le'Veon Bell. He never was able to recover again. And even Josh Jacobs, to be quite frank, I think it had an effect on him. He was not in game shape. So I think a lot of players are probably weary of these like full-fledged holdouts. Not only what it will do to their teams, what it could do potentially monetarily from a fine standpoint, but also I think it hurts their brand as well. Like we see like players fans end up turning against the player, and I just don't think that a lot of players want to deal with that. So I agree with Nak. I think it's much ado about nothing. Laramie Tunsil, Stephon Diggs, T. Higgins, I think Cam Hayward, Micah Parsons, just to name a few, were some guys who didn't show up.
CeeDee Lamb, I think, didn't show up either.
CeeDee Lamb as well, right? So, and when Fab sent us the notes, he just put JJ. I was like, what? JJ McCarthy's already holding out? Like,
yeah, it's hard
to imagine.
Well, actually, thanks for the segue. That's really good, because I was wondering, because I know that JJ McCarthy is just coming into he's most likely going to be the starter, even though it hasn't been officially announced yet.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
You don't think he's going to be the starter? Okay, so let's assume that. So. Fine, let's just, for argument's sake right now, okay? Do you think not having Justin Jefferson there during OTAs might have an issue with the chemistry with JJ McCarthy that could exist, or is it still too early?
Not OTAs, man. You're just throwing in shorts and t-shirts right now. It's like
Oh, we saw the
I
Christian
think
Watson cutting, huh? That Raj, would
Dude.
you post?
So, anyways,
yeah,
I'll
look,
let that. Yeah.
yeah, look, man, like okay, but for regardless of JJ McCarthy, Sam Darnold's a new QB there too. So will it affect
That's a
him?
good point.
Maybe. I think he's just such a great receiver and great, like it's going to gel anyways. And if he's there for minicamp when they actually just have to start putting on pads and the timing gets a little bit easier, or you know, you're actually doing drills, you're doing more drills. They're pretty much walkthroughs right now. It's just kind of like to get in the sense. I don't think it has too much, like too big of an impact.
I
Like
think it
nothing.
affects the vibes. I think just getting guys
Maybe,
together,
Yeah,
maybe.
camaraderie,
yeah,
like ability to trust each other.
But these guys
Impact.
also know it's a business, right? Like they know it's a business, and they all have their, like. Look, even Russell Wilson said about Cam Hayward. He's like, "Look, the guy's been in the league for so long. Da, 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 da. Like we understand the business side of it, and we got his back. Like we know what it is, and we know that a guy like Cam Hayward, when he does set foot in the building, he's going to be in shape. He's going to be ready to work, and he's going to be the same old Cam Hayward. It's not like a Joe Blow that's skipping and hasn't done this and hasn't paid his dues and stuff like that. That's where it starts to
Yeah.
where you to your point where you said fans start turning on it.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it depends on like are they installing plays now? Like actually in any case, JJ is well versed in an offense. He's been in an offense for 3 years. I think the one that like Stephon Diggs not being there, I think it's a new team. Are they installing? It's a new install offense for him. I think that could be beneficial. Gain somewhat of a chemistry with CJ Stroud. I think that one's like,
I
hey,
agree.
maybe
He got paid.
Yeah,
maybe show up to that one, right? But I think JJ is much ado about nothing.
like we mentioned before, these are organized team activities. These are usually 7-on-7 drills, no pads, nothing. These guys are throwing to the wide receiver with no defensive coverage, right? So there is a level of chemistry that can be made, but I don't think that much either. So I think this is definitely noise. Would have to agree with the panel here. We're going to jump right into the next point of news or noise. So the schedule was released this past Wednesday, May 15th. A lot of interesting games on the slate, but I want to focus specifically on Detroit's schedule, the Detroit Lions. In particular, how many dome games or how many games in good weather they have, because we've seen last year the Jared Goff splits in good weather versus bad weather or good conditions versus bad conditions are legit. Like he was a legitimate top 10 quarterback when he was playing in very favorable conditions. And when he wasn't he wasn't a top 10 quarterback, quite frankly. So right now, with their schedule, the way they have it slated right now, out of 17 games, only 3 are played in unfavorable outdoor cold weather conditions. So you're getting 14, potentially 14 solid, or the ability to have 14 solid games out of Jared Goff. So my question, my question to Raj then, news or noise, does this increase Goff's value at the current ADP of QB 14? Like, do you see, is this an increase of where you would draft him, and that and based on how favorable the schedule is for the season?
So I think yes, but with a caveat that most QBs are better at home than on the road. I saw a stat where, and it was a Reddit user actually. I forgot his name, but shout out to him. But basically, home QBs are 3 points per game better than road QBs in 2023. In fact,
Fantasy points.
yeah, fantasy points, yeah. Dak Prescott was 9 points per game higher, home versus road. CJ Stroud was 10 points per game higher, home.
Wow.
So like those are big time splits.
Yep.
If I look at Goff in a dome, 28 TDs, 8 INTs, 106 QB rating, fifth. Outdoor, 5 TDs, 4 INTs, 82 QB rating. Smaller sample size for only 5 games, but still, I would agree with you. And as a Goff owner last year, there were situations where I was weary of starting him, particularly against games against Chicago at Soldier Field. So I would say it is something I would factor in, but you also have to factor in that most QBs are going to be worse off on the road versus at home with the crowd noise. Just the home team's going to be more pumped up. The defense going to be more pumped up as well.
Yeah. So I don't think it's going to give him too much of an edge. So basically, he's going to be playing 14 14 total games in a dome, and 5 of which will be on the road. And in the last 3 years, he scored more than 16 points in a road game in domes once in 6 contests in the last 3 years, over 16 points. And he's averaging just over 10 points per game overall in those games. So those are dome games on the road. So those 5 dome games that he's getting extra this year doesn't really help him that much. Fab is
There's so
laughing
many.
at the word
There's
dome.
so many domes in that sentence.
Dome. But to Raj's point, at home he's averaging 20 points per game in a dome. So does the schedule directly help him? I'm going to say no. He's still got to play on the road, and history has shown in the last 3 years when he plays in domes on the road, he's scoring just over 10 fantasy points per game. So he's just not a road quarterback where you can really trust, and whether it's at Soldier Field where it's probably even worse. I didn't look at his stats at Soldier Field, but especially if he has to play them in the cold, it's just not his cup of tea. Could it help him a little bit? Maybe, but again, history showing that it doesn't really help him out.
Why do you guys think there is a outdoor versus indoor discrepancy? Because like he has like a strong arm, like he's a good QB. Like I was thinking about this when I was kind of doing some analysis on this. Like, why is this the case?
I think it has to do with the weather. It's the bad weather conditions when it comes to a quarterback playing outdoors.
Like, does he have small hands?
He's
used to it. He's used to playing in like perfect conditions, right? Like some QBs, you could tell. Look at Tua. Tua's the same. Like if you really look at it, like in bad conditions, did you see him in KC last year? Okay, that was like
interesting.
Anyone would have played bad, but like Mahomes didn't play that horrible in that game. Okay, he's used to playing more in the cold, but if a QB like Goff went from playing, he was drafted in the Rams in St. Louis, so he was playing in a dome.
He went to Cal.
He went to Cal, but he was drafted. He played in a dome in St. Louis.
Yeah.
And then he went right to LA, right? He played a couple years in LA, and that was also a dome and nice, perfect
it sounds as if Goff definitely excels in favorable conditions. I get your point, Ak. I don't disagree. I think him playing in a majority of favorable conditions for the season won't necessarily push me to draft him, but I think for me specifically, it would be more of a tiebreaker when I'm stuck between him and somebody at the same spot.
Like who?
Because like Caleb Williams.
Is that a fair comp? Is that
no? I'm going based on ADP. I'm going based on ADP right now. Caleb Williams is 13th ADP. Tua is 12th. Goff is 14th.
Goff.
Yeah, again, this is very early on ADP, right?
I would definitely take Goff over Tua.
So would I. So Goff right now, in my opinion, is a very low end QB1, high end QB2, and this is just for me. It's a tiebreaker. It's if I'm stuck between him and Justin Herbert, who I know is not throwing to anybody, but Justin Herbert's a very good quarterback, and we don't know what to expect out of him this year. But I would be much more comfortable with Jared Goff over Justin Herbert, over Tua. But I think that's where it ends for me, because then you're creeping into the top 10, and I don't know if I would. I definitely wouldn't take him over Jordan Love or Kyler Murray or Dak Prescott. Guys are coming more at or again ADP at the end of the top 10 there. Would you do Anthony Richardson or Jared Goff?
Probably Richardson for me.
Yeah, like I said, because
the boomer bust.
Okay, Goff has that extra home game this year. The NFC has the extra home game this year, so he has 9. He has 9 at Ford Field. He gets that extra one there, right? Which is okay. So he's good at home. 20 points per game at home. So right away, you're looking at a nice 180 points from him in 9 games that he's going to play. Will he get you? That's the thing. Is he going to get you another 180? To finish over that 360 hump? Is he going to get you another 180 on the road in 8 games?
But he has the opportunity to get it.
So Goff. Sorry, Fab. So I found the post. I just do want to shout it out because we are sourcing it. His name was Dodger Walker. Goff was 5 points per game higher home versus road. Not surprisingly, Josh Allen probably the best difference, 24.8 at home, 24.6 points per game on the road. So I thought like those are interesting to see. Like most QBs are definitely going to be better at home versus road. How much better are they going to be? I think it depends on the circumstances. Is it dome versus bad weather? But even another interesting one was Minshew was 7 points per game better home versus road. So, and another dome.
Who's not gonna be better at home? Like, is there one where exactly. It was like I don't think there's probably none.
Daniel Jones.
Baker Mayfield was 4 points better on the road versus at home.
Wow,
that's an interesting stat.
Yeah,
very good, very good. So we're gonna keep it rolling with the schedule. Bye weeks are definitely something that we need to consider when creating and putting together our fantasy roster. You don't want to have a team full of players that are always going to be on bye in the same week. And this year's schedule is particularly of interest, especially for week 12 and 14, where we have 6 teams on bye each week. So week 12, I'm just going to spit them out for you guys real quick. Week 12, Falcons, Bills, Bengals, Jaguars, Saints and Jets are on bye.
That's going to be a lot of players there. That's a lot of good players.
Yeah, week 14, same thing. Baltimore, Broncos, maybe not, but still. Texans, Colts, Pats, whatever, and Redskins.
Yeah, a little bit less.
A little bit less.
Redskins.
Oh my God!
Call on Redskins.
How did I not see that?
Sorry, who? Oh, the Commanders.
Yes,
oh,
Commanders.
yeah.
Right,
Sorry, Washington football team, WTF or whatever.
No, it would be WFT.
Thanks for playing, Knack.
You're welcome.
Anytime. So is this news or noise? Is this something that we should take into consideration when we're drafting? Personally, I don't typically look. I pay attention to bye weeks, but I don't necessarily roster my team, construct my roster solely and focus based on bye weeks. I think when we look at week 12 and 14 so far into the season, so much could have happened by then. So many injuries could have taken place, unfortunately. Trades could have taken place from a fantasy perspective. I don't necessarily factor that much into my roster when I'm building it. I mean, at the same time, if I was in a position where I could draft, for example, like Knack, this might apply to you to a degree. If I'm drafting first overall like you are and I can take Josh Allen at 1, there is a chance that you can get Aaron Rodgers on the turn because he's currently going pretty far deep in the quarterback ranking. We're going to touch into that later on in the pod. So that could be an interesting that could be an interesting decision for you when you're there at the turn, right? And you're picking number 21 or 20 or 21, excuse me. It's like, do you take Aaron Rodgers as your QB2? Let's say if you need to get a QB, I'm putting you in a very particular situation now. If you need to get a QB, you take Aaron Rodgers at QB2, or you're like, you know what? I don't want to have to deal with this fucking headache in week 12, even though it's week 12. Quarterback is the most important position that you have to decide for in a 2 QB league like we're rostering right now. So you might have to decide between taking Aaron Rodgers and rolling the dice a little bit, knowing that Aaron Rodgers is a fantastic quarterback when he's healthy, or do you play it safe and you take a Matthew Stafford, or do you take a Deshaun Watson? Pause. Or do you take a Baker Mayfield? So it's depending on the circumstances. I think in this scenario, it's interesting to consider. Personally, though, on my end, I'm gonna get you guys take in a second. I wouldn't change my entire draft strategy for it because we're talking week 12, week 14, very far deep into the season. Like we're talking like 3 months in, and a lot can happen by then. So it's something to keep top of mind, but ultimately, I'm drafting the best guy that I want at that spot. Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. The only one position is, but I think you just named it, is the one I'm most wary of, or I keep an eye mostly for it, is not to have 2 QBs because we start 2, not to have 2 QBs with the same bye. But again, if I'm going around and I'm looking and I'm like, okay, well, there's Aaron Rodgers there, or there's or there's, to your point, Deshaun Watson there. To me personally, I think there's a big gap, and I'd rather Aaron Rodgers than Deshaun Watson. I'm probably going to take, like you said, the best player. Like, I won't let a bye week sway me from taking like the best player. Like, I'm weary about it. Like, I look for it. Obviously, you don't want your whole team to be on, week 7 bye and whatever. So you kind of look out for it. But as you mentioned, the season's long. There's trades. There's this, that. If you start looking out for buys, you're going to start bypassing some players that you shouldn't be bypassing at where you're picking them. And I think that's what I look for is I'll look at my team. Hey, does this guy have a buy? Okay, I already have 2 buys on week 7 at the wide receiver position, but I've got to pick between these 2 guys. Well, if I pick this guy here, another buy on week 7, but if I pick this other guy, okay, he's got a buy week 8, but you know what, the value significantly lower. So I'm gonna always go for value before bye weeks, and especially the only one the only one where I really pay attention to is maybe QB, because you probably don't want to have 2 QBs on bye at the same time.
Unless you just want to take the L that week and fuck it. Just hopefully by the time you get to week 12, you're 11-1, and you'll take the L no problem, right?
Yeah, but it's a big if.
I had that situation with one of Goff, Carr, or Stroud, or 2 of them were both on bye at the same time.
Derek Carr's on bye even when he's playing though sometimes, just FYI.
Yeah.
Facts.
I agree with that. So I had 2 of them on bye, and like didn't really make a big difference. And as you guys know, the way I handle my team is that I'll likely punt on kicker anyways.
Yeah.
So I'll happily go into a week with a kicker, not starting a kicker, and just pick up one of the. There's always a QB. There's like whether it's like a Taylor Heineke. There's always going to be a QB available in a 2 QB league. We always think there isn't, but there always is. And I will take the risk of, to your point, Fab, that example, I'll take the risk of Josh Allen and Aaron Rodgers. Those are 2 very good options, and I'll deal with what I have to deal with 12 weeks, 14 weeks down the line, whatever it is.
Yeah, I think if you're stuck in that situation, you're really not complaining about a bye week all the way to week 12. And just to touch on that, when Roger says punt on the kicker, Roger typically, and a lot of people do this in a strategy, we'll get into that later on in another podcast down the line, certain fantasy managers don't prioritize drafting a kicker in their...
And in Rodgers' case, doesn't even draft a kicker.
So leaves the draft without a kicker and then just figures it out later on, and that's fine. So that's what Roger means by punting a kicker. To what you just mentioned about always having a quarterback available, you guys might remember this stat better than I do, but how many quarterbacks played last year, started? It was like somewhere like in the 50s.
64.
64.
Same the year before, I think it was 63. So
yeah. So that's so again, it's to worry about something 12 weeks down the line or 14 weeks down the line, a little bit premature, but definitely keep it in consideration. We're going to keep the ball rolling, especially when it comes to, I guess, ADP and specifically on certain players. We're going to jump into a new segment called Buying or Selling. So something where we're going to look at players' current ADP. So ADP stands for average draft position. We want to get an idea as to currently where players are being drafted, and if we believe them to be drafted, whether we believe them to be either undervalued at their current draft spot or overvalued. A good one to come up, an interesting name they're going to come up right now is Xavier Worthy. He's a rookie out of... Mac, where's he out of? All right.
Texas.
Out of Texas. He was drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs. Go Horns. Current ADP right now is wide receiver 32. Interesting note, Rashee Rice, because there's a lot of questions and a lot of uncertainty about how many games he will play this season, if at all, due to some legal matters and some reckless driving situations that he has gone through so far in the offseason. He has attended the OTAs, but his season is pretty much in the air, at least in the beginning. Rashee Rice last year helped a lot of players win their fantasy championships. He was a legit wide receiver, went towards the stretch. Nak, I want to get your 2 cents on that right now at Xavier Worthy's current ADP of wide receiver 32 is basically going as a wide receiver 3. Are you buying or selling at that spot?
I am selling, my friends. 34, that is insanely high for
32.
a rookie. 32, excuse me, 34. Um, look, he's more of a burner, and I think it's going to limit his production at the beginning. He's more of like that big threat guy. I think his floor is like super low, like 2-3 targets a game. We're talking. He's got a high upside, sure. He's going to have those games where he's going to have that big play or two, and it's going to be 25 fantasy points, and you're going to be pissed that he's on your bench. But we forget, like, Rashid Weiss was drafted in it was the first round last year as well, right?
Was it a
Was it, or
second?
second round?
I think he's a day 2.
Okay. Anyways, he was drafted to be the guy. He didn't come on in right away. Like, he didn't burst off the scene, right? It was more second half of the year. So we're talking like week 9, week 10 on. He was very, very good. Was he top 10? I don't think he was top 10. He had his off games, but he was very productive later on in the season. And again, rookies are being phased in. Now you have Hollywood Brown, who also comes into that offense, who's going to command, like, Rashid Rice. Who did they have? They had Valdez Scantling there. That wasn't a wide receiver 1. Like, Rice was technically drafted, and he was the guy. Like, he was put into that wide receiver 1 position. It just, Mahomes was going to kind of everyone at the beginning. So, man, wide receiver 32 is way too rich for my blood. There's no way I'm starting him in my third wide receiver slot to start the year. I would not be comfortable. I'm looking at him right now as a late round stash pick. Like, I'm definitely not comfortable. I'm 100% selling him as wide receiver 32.
Roger.
The Chiefs have had questionable track record with wide receivers outside of Tyreek Hill. Sky Moore, Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
Tyreek Hill, we're talking about like top 5 player.
Tyreek Hill was drafted in the 5th round, I believe.
Yes,
Correct me if I'm wrong. He was drafted super late, so they hit on him. But I agree with you, Roger, 100%. I'll let you finish your point, because I remember Pat Mahomes was pushing for Sky Moore, I believe.
Yes, he was pushing for Sky Moore. Yes,
he was the first round pick.
So questionable track record, and the number of wide receivers that have been successful, like Pro Bowl type success, under 175 pounds, like I count them on my hand, like Deshaun Jackson, like Will Fuller, Tavon Austin, Tank Dell, Travis Benjamin,
Emmanuel Sanders.
Sanders, good point, but he was like a bit taller.
Yeah.
Having said all that, I'm gonna buy. The reason why is all that amount of speed, 4.2 speed with Andy Reid. I will take a bet that he will figure out a way to scheme Xavier Worthy open. Like 4.21 speed is electric. That's Tyreek Hill speed. He doesn't have the physicality and the size that, and despite the fact that Tyreek Hill is only 5'11", he's still like a 190. He's well put together. But I think that amount of speed, and I will take a bet on it. Wide receiver 3, I would say maybe low end wide receiver 3, but I'd be willing to take a bet on that.
You're comfortable starting this guy week in and week out as of week 1? That's what 32 means.
Week one, no. But I'd be willing, depending on how my draft goes, I'd be willing to take a flyer on him. And because right now we don't know what's happening with Rashid Rice, even though, I mean, I did see today that the charges were dropped, but they're 2 different receivers. Like, Rashid Rice is a X receiver. He's a quick winner. He's not going deep. He's not winning deep routes. He's a 5. He's going to be like an 8, 10, 11 yard per catch type guy, right? Marquise Brown, I have my reservations about him. He's never been able to put it together. I just think Xavier Worthy, his type of speed is, you don't see that. It's game-changing speed. And he was well touted at Texas. I believe he was a first round pick. I know it's typically outside of what I would do, and I'm not the biggest fan of small wide receivers. But I'm willing to give Andy Reid one more benefit of the doubt if he gets a electrifying gadget like this.
Do you see Andy Reid using him in the same mold he did with Deshaun Deshaun Jackson.
That's exactly it. And Deshaun was the type of guy, again, game-breaking speed, not just the straight line speed, the acceleration. It's you're fast, but then you could even create separation after you're kind of like even with the DB. So that's what made Deshaun Jackson a Pro Bowler for all these years. Borderline, not a Hall of Famer, but borderline Hall of Famer. So I'm banking on that, and that's a great point, Fab. Banking on that chemistry to be able to, or him to take what he's built before with Deshaun Jackson and be able to replicate that with Xavier Worthy.
But you said take a flyer on him, like late round pick. But we're talking like inserting him like wide receiver 3 type guy. 32,
I would draft
wide receiver 3 flex, right?
Yeah.
So
the question was
him fairly higher.
The question was, would I take him as a wide receiver 3? So around that range.
Yeah, it's not specifically 32.
Yeah, I'd be willing to take a bet. Probably not start him right away. And again, depends on how my draft goes. It depends on who else I have.
Yeah.
I'd be willing to take that bet and to stash him just to know, hey, like this is a fun play. For me also, like I like having fun players, and I could see him being really imagine he does hit. Imagine those 50, 60-yard bombs that you saw with Tyreek Hill. Imagine he starts doing that again with Patrick Mahomes.
So let's if I could just do a little segue here. Let's just take since there's going to be a little bit of betting action going on this pod. How about we, for our viewers, so we could kind of take this on the year, we'll do a 32.5 of where he finishes. And obviously you believe he's finishing better than 32.5, and I'm going to say under 32.5 as the wide receiver.
But
2024, and this is our PPR points, standard, whatever it is. You just said you're willing to go, and you're buying, and I said I'm selling. So you're saying
how much?
Bragging rights. No.
No money.
Put money on this? You want to put money on this?
Well, we could put money. I was going to say bragging rights for the pod. This could be something we look at on a weekly basis.
Season, we're going to do a tally.
Yeah, let's do bragging rights.
Yeah, let's just do it. A little fun amongst the pod.
Let's do bragging
rights. 32.5.
Nax says that he will finish worse than 32.5.
32 or under, and he has to finish 33 or more.
Sure, let's do it.
Raj. No, sorry. It's the reverse. I have him finishing 33 or
above,
and Roger has 32 or less.
Yeah,
perfect.
Let's do it.
Bet has been taken into account. We will see you at the end of the season. Wonderful.
Well, no, you'll see it weekly.
Okay,
but you have to remember that wide receiver. The NFL has built defense, or they've created offense in a way that smaller wide receivers can thrive. If you tell me 10 years ago when Tavon Austin was there, I would agree with you. But look what Tank Dell did last year. Even Will Fuller, as much as, and I mentioned him as a guy who couldn't hold up, but when he did hold up, he had like 200-yard games. He was letting it. Like he was absolutely flying with those Texans teams. So.
I will agree with that. I definitely can. There's going to be some players to do it. I just don't see it in Kansas City with all the other people to kind of feed, right? Like Kelsey's not just going to go away, right? Like those 120 or 130 targets he's commanding a year, don't just pack up their bags and leave. Hollywood Brown is going to command a little bit of the ball. I agree to your point.
He's an intermediate wide receiver. Though.
You're right. You're 100%
like Holly
right.
Brown is not a deep threat. He hasn't been a deep
he's
threat.
going to come with target share, right? He's going to come with a target share. Now, look, if Rashee Rice if they decide that he's going to play the beginning of the year, that also hurts his value a little bit more too, right? Like I don't know. Again, for me, I see him as that flashy big play guy that could have huge weeks, but his floor, I think, is like a few targets a game, 2-3 targets a game.
I think a lot of it is contingent on how many games Rashee Rice is going to miss. Mm-hmm. But this is a very spirited discussion, and I like the fact that we're going to have a bet that we can follow for the rest of the season.
Let's go.
We're going to keep it moving. We're going to keep this train rolling, because the next one we got is Mr. Ivermectin himself, the aluminum foil soldier.
Ayahuasca.
Mr. Aaron Rodgers, Aaron. Current ADP right now is QB20. We just mentioned him a little bit sooner in the pod. I hope everyone was paying attention. If you weren't, what the hell are you doing? He's going right now. He's being drafted behind Trevor Lawrence rookie Jaden Daniels for the Washington Redskins. Um, right after Matthew Stafford, also and before Deshaun Watson. Pause, and Baker Mayfield and Geno.
You wrote Stafford.
I know what I wrote, but I know what I meant. Okay, thanks. Raj, not
Yes.
going interrupting. Raj, you buying or selling at ADP QB20? I mean, the Jets invest in their O line, both in the draft and free agency. They also have the easiest strength of schedule. I know that a lot of people don't necessarily put a lot of stock into that because strength of schedule is really based on how teams performed last year, and this is a new year, obviously. But I thought it was interesting to point out that that their team is shored up the O line, and now their schedule seems to be a little bit more delicate than it was last year. So, Raj, in your opinion, is Roger's a low end QB too?
Yeah, because I'm still buying because in 2022 he was the 13th best fantasy QB, and that was his, I believe, age 39 season, first year post Devontae Adams with the youngest wide receiver core. Sorry,
I think it was his age 38.
38, yes, 38. Excuse me. Yeah, it was age 38 season, first year post Devontae Adams with the youngest wide receiver core in the league. He still finished 13th. And if anyone who watched him, we saw there was moments where they did struggle because it was such a new supporting cast, but he still showed a lot of flashes of being Aaron Rodgers. And your question is low end QB1, high end QB2. I still think he could definitely post that. I looked at best age 39/40 seasons by QBs. Warren Moon, Phillip Rivers, Drew Brees, Big Ben, Rodgers, and Brady. They each had quarterback ratings of 91, 97, 115, 86, 91, 112. So that in some cases it's either middle of the pack or slightly above average. Obviously, Garrett Wilson, amazing. Hopefully he's going to get that breakout year that we've all been expecting. But I think an underrated wide receiver on that corp is one of the guys that they drafted, Malachi Corley, who looks like a Randall Cobb type slot receiver, which is perfect for Aaron Rodgers. And as you mentioned, they made a lot of investments to the offensive line. Did they change the turf? No. So if he walks out of there, God, I hope he doesn't tear his Achilles again on Monday Night Football again.
Who's their first game is against the Niners, and who's playing on the Niners? The guy that busted his Achilles last year.
Yeah. What's his name?
I forget his name, but there's the player that created the injury for Rodgers last year in his first game is not playing for the Niners, and it's
Armstead.
I don't know, but Roger Goodell has a sixth sense of fucking humor.
That's horrible.
Because for him to put that game on this,
it's horrible.
Week one.
And just the last thing is
exercise the demons, Aaron Rodgers.
And just the last thing, I think it'll help. And I think a lot of people think he's going to have a big year, but it's Breece Hall. I think it's the second year removed from the ACL, so I think he's going to have a big year, and that'll be a big help to Rodgers. So I'm still buying. I'm still buying the Rodgers stock. And the most important thing is he's not going to run for vice president.
Yeah, that's very true.
Nak, how are you feeling about Aaron Rodgers?
Honestly, the ones you listed off, Watson, Mayfield, Geno, like 100%. I'm taking Rodgers over any of those three. I'm also taking Rodgers most likely before Jaden Daniels. Again, like these rookies, like I'm just gonna go with the proven guy at first before I start rolling the dice on rookies. I know Raj might chime in and say, yeah, with this, CJ Stroud last year took him late and it worked out. 100%. I'm not saying it can't work out, but I'm more of the guy to play it safe with the QBs if I can. I took the swing last year after Kenny Pickett's magnificent preseason where he was like the second coming. That did not work out at all. So I'm less weary to take a chance, especially for my QB2. And like honestly, I think I'm on the fence with Lawrence as well. Like I might be taking Rodgers over Lawrence. Like I understand everyone's gonna say the Achilles. Man, he didn't. Okay, he got that injury, but he's 1 year removed from not playing. I don't know. I think he's got something to prove, and I'm not. I wouldn't bet against Aaron Rodgers. right now.
No.
Like just with everything, like he's just got. I don't know, man. There's weapons, like you said. The offensive line is rebuilt. There's weapons to throw at it. I think he's gonna have a good year. Let's just hope that the Achilles holds up and MetLife doesn't screw him again. But
Well,
man, I'm
it wasn't MetLife, was it? It was the tackle that he got. Like, yeah, fine, his foot was planted, but like I wouldn't put. Anyways,
No, that tackle was like there was very little contact with the actual Achilles.
But it wasn't.
From what I remember.
Did he do it himself? It wasn't a
It
tackle.
looked like it looked like a really innocent play.
Like they're saying the defensive lineman like pushed like the
offensive lineman
he got through the defensive lineman. He got through, but Rogers got that on the turf. That was MetLife turf that did that. That wasn't the tackle itself.
Fair, but I'm not. Am I the only one that's not concerned about the Achilles injury? Like I've been.
No,
I'm not concerned.
Yeah, I'm. He's healthy. He's good to go.
I said it in our group chat so many times, guys. Like, I don't know if you recall, but like 20 years ago, Vinny Testaverde in 1999. It was the year after the Jets made the AFC championship game. He tore his Achilles in the first play of the year. Jets championship hopes were absolutely done. He came back the next year and ended up playing another like 6-7 years. Like Achilles injuries, they're just not as debilitating as they once were. Same with ACL injuries. So
true.
I think the way he came back was like I think he's in big time fuck you mode, and like it's
man.
Aaron fucking Rodgers. Like I'm not gonna take
100%.
I'm not gonna take Trevor Lawrence over Aaron Rodgers.
Dude,
like,
whoever's drafting right now and fading Aaron Rodgers as QB20, that's ridiculous. I agree with you guys 100%. We're gonna keep this pod rolling. I think Aaron Rodgers is gonna have a big fuck you tour on the way back over here. And if he throws for 4,500 yards and like 35 touchdowns, I would not be surprised at all. One guy, though, I do want to mention, I'm concerned about, we're going to talk about in a hot second.
Your guy.
We have in the spot. Yeah, man.
Boy.
Kyren Williams. I love this guy. He was great for me last year. Current ADP right now for running backs is 8th. He's going right after Saquon, Travis Etienne, right before Rashad White and Josh Jacobs. He was RB2 on a points per game basis last year, only behind Christian McCaffrey. But with the addition of Blake Corum in the backfield, new coach, is there a concern about Kyren being a fantasy football winner this season? Personally, yes. I am slightly fading him. Running back 8 is slightly too high for me, simply because of all the things I just mentioned right now. I'm not really concerned about the injury necessarily, because I know he missed about 5 games last year with some injury issues. Like he missed 4 in the middle of the season, then the last game of the season didn't play.
He's also missing OTAs because of the knee.
Thank you, Knack. Again, these are OTAs, but it's a very good point.
I thought OTAs don't matter.
Well, I think
I'm saying it doesn't matter, but when it's injury, it matters.
What if he wasn't going to show up anyways?
Here it is.
Well, you're still injured.
What if my anti-ball should be
but maybe he was just going to skip them anyways. Like, I don't know. We can't be like, oh, OTAs matter, and then he didn't like.
No, but when it's injury related, no.
When it's injury related, it matters. Like, come on, it matters. Injuries, it matters. Like, bro, Justin Jefferson for a contract, he doesn't want to get injured. That's why he's not going. Right? Someone not going because they're injured. That is.
Do we know the extent of it?
It's his knee again.
Oh, it's the same knee. Okay, yeah, it's the same knee.
It's the knee. His knee is not. He's not fully ready to go. It was announced today that he's missing all of OTAs because of the knee injury, because he's not cleared.
Listen, running backs in general this year are a little bit iffy, I find, apart from like maybe the top 5 or 6 guys. And Kyren Williams is falling right at that cusp of where I feel comfortable at 8. And the guys that I just mentioned that are going after him, specifically Josh Jacobs, I would feel much more comfortable drafting him as my RB1 than Kyren Williams. I'm very concerned, and this is very early on, so I don't really have anything specific or tangible to go with this. But I'm very concerned with Blake Corum and their new coach, Harbaugh, in general, just with that, how he's going, because how Harbaugh likes to run the rock. And he wants to.
I think you're mixing up 2 teams here.
Yeah,
Harbaugh is Chargers.
You're doing what I'm doing.
Corum is the Rams.
Corum's at the
Kyren Williams is the Rams.
Yeah. And Corum was with the Chargers.
No, Corum is with the Rams as well.
Yeah.
But Harbaugh is the Chargers
Harbaugh
coach.
with the coach, excuse me. You're right. I'm sorry. With the new offensive coordinator, then I apologize. All the same, though, with their backup being with their running back backfield being as it is right now, I'm very concerned with how they're going to be splitting that backfield and how they're going to be using those two guys. I don't see Kyron Williams being able to pay off the RB8 investment. I'm fading him, and it's hard for me to say because this guy he was my darling last year, and I spent a lot of fab on him as well, like right in the beginning of the season, and he brought me to the playoffs, and he brought me to a first round bye and all that stuff. The injury does concern me, and I think RB8 is going to be a little bit more rich for what I'm willing to pay. To be honest, Josh Jacobs interests me a lot more. Derrick Henry, he's going RB12 right now, interests me a lot more than Kyron at 8. Even Isaiah Pacheco. So
Wow.
yeah, I mean, I'm very, very concerned. I'm very concerned, even though the guy, and I might eat my words in the season. If that's the case, then that's great. Rashad White, though, I'm not too high on either. But that's a different conversation for another day.
Even in a PPR.
Well, I know Rashad White had a freaking crazy year last year.
Crazy,
Towards the end, he
great
did.
PPR year.
Towards the
Didn't he
end,
finish? He finished with he was RB12 last year.
Fantastic in PPR, man. He was catching.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
it was
he had
amazing.
like 60 receptions. Yeah, I get it. But
It was
like, I'm
amazing.
just,
But I'm to your point. I'm definitely taking Josh Jacobs before Kyron. The more and more I've been reading, the more and more like Corum is just the better in every aspect. Is what I've just been hearing. Better runner, better catcher, better just like all around better all around back. So I thought at first he wasn't going to push him too much, but I think sooner rather than later, you're going to see more of a 50-50 split in that backfield, which could potentially hurt Kyron Williams, like you said, eighth overall.
But McVay has never had a committee. McVay has always chosen one, and I shared this stat in a previous pod, but Rams running backs have averaged about 210 carries per season. So McVay doesn't go with the committee. He goes, if he's going to go with a guy, it's either he picks Corum at training camp, so at least you'll know that Kyron will be the guy. And I don't think that's going to be the case because Corum is still a rookie. Now, if there's an injury, maybe that changes. But from what we've seen with McVay, he's always gone with the lead back. I have concerns about Kyron more so from a talent perspective. I'm just running backs in this system last about 2 to 3 years. We've seen it all the time, dating back to the Mike Shanahan years. And I've said it many times, 3.5 yards per contact, 2.5 yards per rush before contact is a crazy stat that shows how good the system is and how good the offensive line is. So in terms of your question, I would take him over Travis Etienne. I think I would take Rashad White personally over Kyron Williams. Jacobs, I had in 2 leagues last year. He was amazing in 2022, but that last year scared me a little bit. He looked slow and out of shape. Granted, he's going to have his full training camp, but to that point, then Marshawn Lloyd.
He's also in a better system now.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. But the Packers also don't necessarily give 80% of carries to one guy. We've seen them split Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. Now there's Marshawn Lloyd, who a lot of people were high on. As a lot of people, Daniel Jeremiah was saying he's the number one running back in his board. So we'll see. The only benefit to Kyron is if he's healthy. Again, McVay typically only uses one running back, and the Rams, Kyron faced a stacked box, so 8 people at the line of scrimmage, the least amount of time of anyone, 5% last year. So the fact
you'd be comfortable taking him 8th running back?
No, like again, I think it's I prefer to avoid. I would prefer to avoid him personally. It's just not my preference in terms of like types of running backs. Not my preference, and I have a feeling that eventually I'm having a hard time separating the talent and the fantasy production with this guy. I think in a dynasty league, and I did some research, a lot of people are actually trading him because they feel eventually Corum will be the guy. In our type of league, though, I could see why people will go one more year because the talent on the outside with Puka and Cooper Kupp and Stafford is there. So,
that's a great link into Dynasty and how a lot of that stuff can look into futures for us as well, about how a lot of GMs are are trading away players or fading players and all that. Just basically gives everybody else an idea as to how the overall sentiment is. These are fantastic discussions, and we're about to run out of time right now. But before we end off, I just want to thank everyone for listening. I want to thank everyone for paying attention. I want to thank everyone for interacting with all of our posts on Instagram, on TikTok, on Twitter. Follow us wherever you get your social media fix for the day. Follow us wherever you listen to your podcast. We're widely available. We're very excited to keep this trade rolling. Next week's going to be episode 9. This one is episode 8. Episode 8 stands for Rogers.
Wow, 8 comes after 9.
Yeah, before
No.
9. Wow. Episode 8, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. The Ocho. We are the Bush League Huddle Fantasy Football Podcast, and we'll see you next week. Peace.
Goodbye.
Bye, guys.